Hello and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. Today, we have a live stream for you all about inlets. We're going to look a little bit at what the use cases are, hopefully get some questions from you that have tuned in. I can see there's a bunch of people here already. Thank you for coming. And if you're watching this later on, have a look at it, watch it through, and feel free to follow up through another channel like Slack or Twitter. So I want to bring on Johan Siebens. Johan is a cloud consultant, and he's been very active in the inlets community. And you've probably, if you're here, you've probably actually read a blog post that he's written as well. So I'm just going to bring Johan on now. So, hi, Johan. How
Hello.
are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for agreeing to come along. Sure. Tell us a bit about how you got involved with Inlets, the project.
It has already been a while. My first use case I was interested in inlets was because I was running some services on the Raspberry Pi in my home lab, especially K3s services. And one of the problems I had, I just wanted to do some GitOps using ArgoCD, but unfortunately ArgoCD has no support yet for the ARM architecture, so I couldn't deploy ArgoCD into one of my K3s clusters on my Raspberry Pis. But the good side of ArgoCD is you can hook in remote clusters. So what I did, I was just spinning up a Kubernetes cluster on one of the cloud providers, deployed ArgoCD in that cluster, and then bring the API service of my local K3s service into the remote cluster using inlets. Mm-hmm. It was one of the first use cases I was working with inlets. Yeah.
That's interesting because I remember the blog post you went on to write about it. And one of the things that we find, because you and I both like our Raspberry Pis, is that you get to this point where there's some software that you're used to using in the cloud, you really like it. But then in order to run it on the Raspberry Pi, you have to either rebuild it from scratch, ask the maintainers and wait goodness knows how long, or the other alternative is you can install a community image that you don't know who's written that and whether it's of any, whether it's going to be safe or it's going to leak the passwords from your local Wi-Fi network or steal your bank details. And so one of the things you can do is what you did, run a cloud-based Kubernetes cluster, run that software there, and then add other Raspberry Pi Kubernetes nodes in and run, the workloads there.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And the nice thing about sorry?
Is this a little bit like I've seen people use Rancher in a similar way? Have you used that at all?
No, not yet. It's one on my to-do list to have a closer look at Rancher and what they are doing, especially with their GitOps implementation called Fleet.
Yes,
they're doing it the other way around, so you can also bring your cluster. No, you don't have to expose your cluster there.
Yeah, so the Fleet is interesting, but a lot of people might not even know what ArgoCD is. I mean, it's a project that is a CNCF project, and it exists to try and get your applications deployed to your cluster continually. So whenever your team makes a change to one of the services, it will roll it out for you without you having to go in and touch the Kubernetes CLI.
Yeah.
And then Rancher.
Nice thing. Yeah,
go on. I think we have a bit of lag on the line, so you go ahead.
Yeah, the nice thing about the implementation I did with ArgoCD is I can bring more clusters to a central control plane where ArgoCD is deployed. But then I realized if I can bring the API server of a remote cluster into a central operational Kubernetes cluster, I can bring other services as well, like, for example, the Prometheus. And that was, in fact, a follow-up blog post that was published on the Inlets blog site, that we can bring multiple remote Prometheus services into the same operational cluster.
So this is your blog, and I just had a look at this. It's a couple of pages, but some of the things on here look really interesting. We've got Quake 3 Arena, that brings back some memories. Multi-region K3S. You even looked at how product like actually called Boundary can be used with inlets, which was really cool. And lots of Raspberry Pi. I see a theme here. Now this is the one, isn't it? This is the one. And you're great at diagrams as well. You know, I always like your diagrams.
Thanks.
I think they sort of tell a story. And this looks like the one that you put together. So what's going on there? How has that helped us with this use case where Argo couldn't run on a Raspberry Pi? I don't know if that's still the case.
I think they're still working on it. It's not a dead issue. They are actively continue to progress on that part. But if you look at the picture, then for me on the right side, we have a Kubernetes cluster on a public cloud provider. It is displayed as DigitalOcean, but it can be AKS on Amazon or GKA on Google Cloud. It doesn't matter. As long you were able to deploy ArgoCD in that cluster. If it is a supported architecture, then there is no problem. And how ArgoCD works, you can configure your application to be deployed in the same cluster where ArgoCD is running, but you can also configure remote clusters. And of course, the cluster where ArgoCD is running should be able to connect to the API server of the remote cluster. And there is where inlets becomes an important part in my setup, because my private K3S cluster is running in my home lab at home, and I need to expose the API service somehow so the public cluster can access it. And that's, in this case, the inlet's exit server is running as a pod in the cluster where ArgoCD is running. It's exposed using a load balancer, and I'm not sure if at that time I put Nginx or traffic in front of it for the certificate.
Yeah, it's one of the options, isn't it? And so effectively, what we've got here is, I would like to call this hybrid cloud.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Indeed.
We have part of our infrastructure is private and on premises. Part of it is public and on the internet. But the important thing to note here is, because I think a lot of people, when they hear of tunnels, they just think of Ngrok, or as you call it, Ngrok. And they think, right, well, a tunnel is insecure because I'm putting my website, my data, my home, or my data into the internet. Is that what's happening here?
Somehow, but I think it's more secure because there is TLS in place. The exit service, the exit node is putting a certificate in place, so it's secure by default.
But the actual Kubernetes API server that's appearing on the right-hand side, that isn't on the internet, is it?
No, in this case it's
not exposed.
No, in this case it becomes a cluster IP service, Kubernetes service in the public cluster.
It becomes privately available.
Yeah,
and that,
absolutely.
What else could you use if you wanted to do something like this normally? What other kind of tools are there?
I'm not sure. I didn't look at other tools because I found
what about
pretty useful for this.
VPC pairing or OpenVPN or WireGuard?
Yeah.
Would that work here?
Perhaps. I did some tests with Tailscale because that's one of the very new and popular tools. But then every node needs to be connected in the Tailscale network, otherwise they can find each other. So it's more a mesh of nodes instead of services.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've struggled to do is sort of say, look, Ngrok is Ngrok, Tailscale is Tailscale, Inlets does this. If you have these sets of problems, it can help you. And I still think that we're sort of struggling with that. And it may be for any number of reasons. But the core thing I want to try and say here is Inlets is how you connect a service to a network. Whereas Tailscale and Wireguard are how you connect networks and nodes together. Inlets is working specifically at the application level. So it might be TCP traffic or HTTP traffic that we're forwarding. In your example, if we flick back to it, it's the TCP traffic of the Kubernetes API server. That is what we're actually got smaller when I zoomed in. That's what we're tunneling. Now, if we were to use a VPN, not only can that be quite hard to set up and manage and require firewall ports to be opened and UDP and one thing or another, this works over a WebSocket. And I guess the easiest way to sort of show people is the first diagram I ever drew was a little bit like this. And so, again, I can't zoom in. What we have on the left is our host node. Let's say my laptop. On the right-hand side, we have this exit node or exit server. And that terminology is a little bit similar to something like Tor. But what it's explaining is that we have a private network and somehow it gets a presence on the internet using another computer to go through it. Why I actually built this originally is I was working at an enterprise company. I'd actually used Ngrok at a very large enterprise company and had to do all sorts of horrible hacks to get that to work. And then I was limited on my connections and it would fail every 7 hours and such. And actually I thought, I can live with it. Then I moved to another company and I was leading a team developing something that needed to receive webhooks. We were doing a CI/CD product, a bit like Argo, and we just couldn't get any webhooks. There was no way of getting them in. We couldn't create a VPN because we were already on a corporate VPN. We couldn't use SSH tunneling because that was blocked as well, outgoing SSH. Imagine trying to do your job without that. And then I thought, okay, I'll use Ngrok. Ngrok.io is on the ban list. Great. And there was just no way of us getting the webhooks. We weren't trying to exfiltrate data from the company. We weren't trying to open up the world. We weren't building a VPN where people could access confidential services. We had a web server in a container in a Kubernetes cluster, just needed to get some JSON. And that's where I put this together. And it was a Christmas holiday. I think it was between 2018 and 19 that year. And it was very hacky. It just about worked. And it was very slow. But I remember trying it out and just seeing it work and being like overjoyed that I'd solved this problem that I'd always had.
Yeah.
And I think just seeing the community grow around it now, and when we look at the GitHub account, there's a bunch of different projects that have come out of it now. And in particular, the open source version that I started out with, it's almost 8,000 GitHub stars, which shows that this isn't just a problem that me and my team have had at 2 companies.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Okay, so why is it easier to use than the other solutions? Well, it uses a WebSocket. So on the left, we've got our client. It makes an outbound connection. Because it's outbound, that means what can we avoid having to do?
Firewall rules and stuff like that. A
Right.
VPN is not necessary.
Because normally, like you work with clients, don't you, on a regular basis that have similar use cases. You have to. Why do you need a firewall port?
For security reasons, of course.
Well, it's for the opposite of security. It's to open a door, right? Because normally we'll be connecting from the outside in. And so we need the door to be open. Maybe we'll use an IP whitelist or something and say, right, that port is open and that's going to go to this machine on our local network.
Yeah.
And actually, that can work if you live on your own and you only have one computer that ever needs to receive a webhook, and you're the administrator because it's your house. You can just log into your router, edit the rules, and you can say, right, any data on port 80 is going to go to that specific IP address, which is great until you realize that you've now told everyone in the world where you live, potentially told them your customer ID, your city, and a bunch of other data that you don't want people knowing. You probably don't.
True.
So another benefit of this, because I was there, like I had the port forwarding for SSH and all sorts of things, is that it's the exit node's IP address that we actually end up seeing as a user. I'm going to show you an example. I actually set up a OpenFAS instance that runs a sponsors portal. I know you've been into this as well.
I did.
And this is a function running on my Raspberry Pi. It's got a valid TLS certificate. But if we were to go to the IP address and we look it up, let's see what we get. That's not an IP. Let's see if this website doesn't work. I would show you in a terminal, but I want to see what I can get you first of all in a browser. Okay, there we go. So the first thing we've got is DigitalOcean LLC and their IP address, not mine. So if you use port forwarding at home, it's your IP that's there. People know where you live. And I was actually on a call with somebody I was mentoring yesterday, and I showed him this, and he was like, oh yeah, I've set this great thing up and I've done all these different things. And I said, do you realize I can find out almost exactly where you live by going through these tools. And now look, here's the IP address. And people probably know I live in Peterborough, I don't live in Slough. But for intensive purposes, I do. And I could have created the server in New York, and people might think I live there, which is fine. Should we try this out? Do you want to try creating an inlets exit server and connecting to it?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, David, Hassan. Hi, Amit. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. It's good to see you. Always nice to have regulars along. Now, if you share your screen, I'll pop that up on here as well. And I'm just asking in the chat, have you guys got any questions you'd like us to answer, or any demos you want to see? Now let me see, there's your screen. And you're going to have to go bigger than that. I haven't got my glasses on. Probably a lot bigger. Oh, we've got Mehdi as well. So what we're doing right now is we're making it legible. I'm trying to get so you can read. Go bigger. Bigger than that. Bigger, bigger, bigger.
Not yet.
Oh dear. I think you might have to share your terminal, because I don't think anyone's going to be able to read that. Are you a 4K? Are you on a 4K, 5K monitor?
Yeah, I can change that, of course.
Joys over Linux computer. Who's using Linux on their desktop? I am. Funny story, I had to actually reboot my computer with 2 minutes to go because my camera wouldn't start. Hey, Paul. Good to see you there. Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, we can see what you're doing now. So tell us, what are the two ways? What are the 2 ways that you would create like that exit server that we were talking about? I'd keep the font that size if I were you. I'd keep the font the size you have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm actually using multiple ways of creating an exit node, either manually, creating a cloud VM on any cloud provider you want, like GCP or DigitalOcean or Scaleway, Civo, doesn't matter. But I'm using Terraform as well to create some exit nodes, especially on GCP.
So you could create one manually. You could create it with Terraform. And what's the other way?
Inletsctl, of course.
Inletsctl. What's inletsctl?
Well, it's a CLI. It's a very useful command line tool to create exit nodes on any cloud provider that's supported by inletsctl. And there are a couple of them. Of course, the major ones like Azure, and GCP, and AWS, but DigitalOcean, Scaleway, Hetzner, Vultr.
That's quite a lot. I mean, if you run the tool, it does tell you, I think, doesn't it? If you run help or create and then help. There, it's halfway down if you can highlight it.
Yeah, here they are.
Now this is this tool's written in Golang, isn't it? Have you contributed to it?
I did. Awesome. I added the Vultr provisioner.
Nice. Are you going to use that one now, or?
No. Because I prepared the DigitalOcean token, so that's easier now.
Okay. So what's going to happen when you run the command if you want to start typing it in and explain as you go along?
So we have inletsctl create, and now I have to think. First, I'm going to write it down, the access token from file, because I don't want to type it in the console. And now by default, the DigitalOcean provider is used. So if I don't specify which provider I want to use, it will be DigitalOcean. That would be fine for now. And what is going to happen is that there will be VM created, a virtual machine created on DigitalOcean. And the tool inletsctl will provision the VM with an inlets Pro. I know it's TCP. Which one do you prefer now as a demo, TCP or the HTTP one version?
Do the TCP. That's the default now, I think, anyway.
Yeah, it is default true. So what will happen? It will start the inlets exit node on the VM that will be created.
Okay. Is that all we need? Do we need to pick a region? I use London one, but you must be closer to what, Frankfurt?
I can use, most of the time I'm using Amsterdam.
Amsterdam, okay.
Yeah.
That's close to Belgium.
Yeah. So if I give it a go, then you will see it will start provisioning the VM.
I'm going to share a link for people. If you want to go and have a look at inletsctl, Johan's contributed to it. Maybe there's a cloud provider that you're really passionate about that you'd love to see in the tool. Go and have a look. One of the other things that we did was extract all of the cloud provisioning code out of there and put it in its own Golang library. I'll give you that link as well. And the library allows you basically to create a cloud instance and run a bunch of scripts when it starts up using Cloud Init. So it's quite handy for making a quick application. Okay.
So, yeah.
What have we got?
We have there. Yeah. So the result. It took a few more seconds to build the VM and provision the inlets exit nodes, and the outcome of the commands display what needs to be executed on the client side to make the tunnel. So now we have the exit node, but the exit node itself is not doing anything yet.
Okay. And that's because the client is going to connect from our computer and say, look, these are the ports I want. Can you expose them for me?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
What are you going to run for us? Have you got anything?
Well, yeah, I've prepared a Raspberry Pi on my home here.
Are you going to do an SSH forwarding?
No, I'm first I'm going to jump in the Raspberry Pi to install the inlets client, and it will connect to the exit server.
Okay, cool.
And I think I don't have Inlets Pro installed yet. Oh, it's already there.
Got it. Awesome.
Yeah. So I can just copy paste this command and maybe fine tune it a little bit.
Taylor Doozle, that's joined us from a previous stream. Thanks for dropping in. And you know Taylor, don't you? He's because you do a lot of stuff around HashiCorp products. He's a developer advocate and joined them recently, and was also on the stream a couple of weeks ago. And we were looking at OpenVAS and Golang. Had a good time with that. Now, what are all the parts of this command, if you can tell us?
Yeah, it's a little bit big for me, so now I have to have a closer look. So the first thing is I'm going to start the Inlets Pro binary that I had already downloaded on the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the new format because in the new version of Inlets Pro, there is another mode you can run the server and the client. It's an HTTP mode. Perhaps if we got time, we can demo or show something about that as well.
That could be good.
Yeah. But now, because the server is running in TCP modes, then we have to connect the client as well in using the TCP. And the first part is the URL, the connection string where the exit node is running. You can already see it's secure.
Secure WebSocket. So WebSocket is just like a HTTP server, but then it's got TLS put on top of it.
Yeah, indeed. And then when creating the exit node, a random token is generated. So that's for authentication. So it's okay. People can now see the token and try to type it and connect.
Not if you move fast enough.
And then because I'm using the Inlets Pro, you have to have a license as well. You can request a trial if you want to try it out for 14 days, but otherwise you have to have a valid license.
Remind everyone, I'm just going to grab it now as you keep talking, is that there's an offer. The first 5 people that want to take it, you get $30 off for a year. And I don't know, have you ever sort of thought about, you know, how you can't buy it month by month, the Inlets Pro? Sometimes people have asked me about that. I'm going to drop the link in now. You know, why is that? Well, this software is basically enterprise software, and the normal price for a business to use it is 10 times more than what you guys would pay if you wanted to get a license yourself. And so it may be something that we consider in the future, but just to create all of the infrastructure to support a license so that you pay month by month is kind of, well, it's a huge amount of work and very, very expensive. I don't know. I think what might be more useful is if we created a small SaaS for you where you can connect with your tunnels. But unlike the existing SaaSes, we would have to find something that's a little bit unique or different for you. It might just be that you can then run that same inlets on your own service in the future if you decide, you know, you need a bit more power or a few more tunnels.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I already started the client, so it's connecting to the proxy, and everything should be up and running now. And
so if I do SSH then to that, what's going to happen? Oh, shall I try?
Yeah, sure.
So could anybody connect to that now?
I hope not, because they don't have the private and the public key of my Pi user.
Well, let's see. I'm going to try it. Let me put my screen on. Can everybody see this? Right. It's just going to be like in the movies. I'm going to hack Johan.
Sure.
Now that he's put his Raspberry Pi on the internet, he's vulnerable to me hacking him. Authenticity of host can't be trusted. Well, this is what comes up all the time, so I'm just going to go yes. And a password. Is it? Oh, come on. Is it going to be what I think it is? Is it the default password? Oh, I was so close. Because as you know, like the password is Raspberry, right?
Yes, indeed.
Raspberry Pi. I can't get in. But if I was to give you my SSH key, then I would be able to connect, right? We'll switch you back to your side now. See, Ian has a guess here. I didn't try that one. Okay.
I made a SSH connection to the public IP address with a different port, of course, because if I use 2020, then 22, then I will use the SSH server of the VM instead of the one that has been tunneled to the Raspberry Pi. So I am able to connect without any problem.
Wow. What else did you have to do? Because that just seemed far too fast. You must have had to have changed something on your Raspberry Pi, or...
Yeah. First of all, I changed the default password, of course.
Yeah.
And then I did an SSH copy ID, so my private key, the authorized keys are uploaded to the Raspberry Pi. And my private key is already loaded in my SSH agent on my machine, so I can SSH straight into the Raspberry Pi without any problem.
I mean, I've just showed everyone. In that short period of time, I've been able to access that tunnel and connect to that service. Now, why don't we try and do 2 ports? So run something on your Raspberry Pi, if you log back into it. And let's also port forward 8080.
Yeah, but maybe something else. Do you know this port?
What is this, console? It seems like console.
It's VNC.
Oh, VNC. Okay. So unlike the free open source version of inlets, we can actually punch forward real TCP traffic and multiple ports to the same exit server, which we're doing right now.
And now if I'm but yeah, perhaps
we'll have to take your word for it, because I can't read that. Linux on the desktop.
Type in the public IP address. It's really small, but I can connect. And then use my new password for the Pi user.
What is the password?
And there it is.
What do you guys think? Would you find this useful to be able to, I don't know, at your mom's house, install a Raspberry Pi for her with VNC, and if she runs into some problem with a spreadsheet or the printer doesn't work, you can basically just VNC straight into there securely? I think, I don't know why I haven't tried that already. Why pay for TeamViewer? Okay, so that's pretty cool. We've actually got a question. This is from Paul. And last year, he put together what sounds like a very complicated workflow. He was using API gateway, SNS, SQS, and Lambda to push webhooks to an API gateway and hacked a Go program to run a server in the colo to pull from SQS. Wow. What was the use case for that, Paul? Was this just so that you could get webhooks? Because that sounds like a lot of work. And what's the cost difference between that approach and a VM on DigitalOcean? Well, a VM on DigitalOcean is going to cost you, what, €3 to €5 per month. And it sounds like it's going to save you a lot on your AWS bill and also a lot of headspace. Because if you have to onboard 10 AWS services just to get a webhook, whilst it's very cool, it is a solved problem. Maybe do you think we could just get a webhook and show Paul how that works?
Yeah, I guess so.
We were talking about the new Let's Encrypt part of inlets.
Yeah.
We could try that. Or if you like, we could try the tunnel that I set up for you earlier.
Yeah, but I have a VM ready on DigitalOcean.
So okay, yeah, sounds perfect. So Paul's saying yes, it was. He was just trying to get webhooks. So what are you doing? What's up in the top window?
Now I'm logged in on the VM on DigitalOcean.
Okay.
It has, of course, a public IP address, but I put a DNS record pointing to that public IP address. So there is a domain coupled on that VM.
Okay.
So I can show you again. I'm just making a connection to johan.exit.j5s.io instead of the public IP address.
And I will share that in the messages in case anyone wants to try and connect to it when it's ready. So there it is.
Go and close this one. So here we go. I don't have Inlets Pro here yet. What's the fastest way to install a binary?
The fastest way to install the binary is probably going to be for you to go to the releases page on GitHub, just wget the one you want. If you have inletsctl, that can get it for you as well. And guys, if you want to try Inlets Pro, you can get $30 off for a year. It's normally $25 per month. So price might have changed by next time you look, but at least today, that's the cost. And it's a bit cheaper because you're getting your discount. It's the first 5 people. We've got a couple already gone for it. Okay. I did a new release today, actually. So fingers crossed, should be fine. And this is written in Go. So just like the open source version, this is all written in Go, which means we can do really cool stuff. You're going to make that executable now.
Yeah.
And then run it.
Yeah, that's great.
Nice.
So here we are. It's a public VM, so we're going to run the exit server part, of course. So the HTTP.
So tell us what you're typing in. Oh, that was quick.
Yeah, let me rephrase.
What are you up to? Pretend like everybody watching hasn't seen this before.
Yeah, so I'm going to start the Inlets Pro HTTP server, but the control plane part of the tunnel, we will create a certificate by itself. It will create a certificate for the control plane, and because I want to use my domain instead of the IP address, the name should be available in the certificate. And that's the flag autoTLS-SAN. Then you can give your IP address, the public IP address, or a domain name, and then the certificate will be created with that name. But that is just for the control plane part of the tunnel. And by default, if I start this, then it's also displayed in the log files, the control plane part, so that's where the client will connect to, is running on port 8123, and the data plane is now running on port 8000.
Okay, what's the difference between the data plane and control plane for people that aren't familiar?
Yeah, so the control plane will be used to make the WebSocket connection coming from the client. So the client will connect on
Right.
each port.
That's a diagram that we saw before. This is how we don't need the firewall port.
Yeah, indeed. And then on the client side, we will expose, for example, a Jekyll website you are working on, or
like the inlets blog.
Indeed, that's a good example. I can show you, by the way.
Should we do that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's give it a try. I don't know who's listening who feels like they don't have enough time to write all the blogs they want to. That's certainly true for me.
My console crashed. I'll try again.
Okay, just give it another shot. One of the things that I'd like to know from people is, are there any blog posts you'd like to see me and Johan write about inlets? Because this seems like something that actually I use quite a lot. I make typos, and sometimes I say things in blog posts that don't make sense. And so what I like to do is develop locally. And without pushing that to the cloud, I can just share a URL with Johan or Alistair Hay or somebody else. And they'll just read it and go, look, you made a mistake here. And I get a chance to get some initial feedback before I then publish that and put it in front of the whole world.
So now I'm on my machine. I do hope I have Inlets Pro. Sorry. Yep.
Yep, that's good. So you're running the client on your computer and you're putting in the address.
Yes. .io.23. Let me think. The upstream localhost 3000 token.
Oh, that's my screen. I'll put yours back.
Fingers crossed. The license file.
I'm thinking of changing this so that it always looks in the set location. If the file's there, it just tries it out. I think that will make it a little bit easier to type in. You want a double dash on that. Now, did you have your token? Is the token right?
Oh.
What am I going to do? I'm going to see if I can connect to this once you have it running.
So now if you open a browser to johan.exit.j5s.io port 8000.
Johan.exit.j5s.
J5s.io.
Connection refused because you're trying to forward to port 3000 and it's 4000 that you need.
No, you have to open port 8000.
I have, but you're forwarding the traffic to port 3000, and if you look in your middle window,
that's a mistake. I'm sorry.
That's okay, because 3000 is what you probably use with React and with Express.js.
And Grafana.
Right. In Grafana. Let me switch over. So this is my screen, and what have we got?
I see already connections passing by, so maybe other people's are.
But
that's no problem.
Is this live? Why don't you go and add a blog post and let's see if it works?
Yeah, and then I can easily switch.
So this is the site. Johan's going to add it, and I'm going to refresh it on my end. Oh, you have one in half done, don't you, that we can show?
I thought so, but I cannot find it.
Johan Siebens inlet scaling, that one. I can see it. Okay, yeah. Right. Back to my screen. And let's see. Come on. Hey, well done. What do you think, guys? People that are tuning in, that are watching this, me and Johan are collaborating on a blog post here. We're trying to help you understand how to scale inlets on Kubernetes. This isn't even published, and I'm able to go straight in here. I can see the bits that are still to come. I think you missed your syntax highlighting on this bit, so you need to go back and add that. And then, wait, Jira?
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing that concerns me is this says it's not secure. Why is that? What do we do about that?
We can provision certificates somehow. I can see two options. Either I install, for example, Caddy on my machine, but then I think we have to switch to the TCP version instead of the HTTP version. But fortunately for us, the HTTP version of the Inlets Pro has a very nice feature, so it can auto-provision certificates for you automatically, just like Caddy is doing.
I tell you what,
Let's Encrypt.
Can you see at the top of your screen, if everybody looks there, I'm going to click on the blog post. Let's watch what happens. Can you see those files loading at the top?
Mm-hmm.
And the ADNS one was a bit bigger because and someone else is looking as well. Cool. Now, this is the post that Johan's referring to, and put this together recently. We've got both ends, the client and the server. The control plane itself has its own public key infrastructure that is there because we don't want your tunnel to go down if Let's Encrypt is unavailable or you failed to renew your certificate because of rate limiting. So we have our own TLS for the control plane. That's what separates Inlet's open source and pro, along with more testing, more documentation, a Kubernetes integration, a Helm chart. The list goes on. And then the data plane, today we just put out port 8000, right? The equivalent would be 80. But for secure HTTPS sites, we want 443. So we want Let's Encrypt to give us a certificate for that side. And we'll continue to use 8123 in our certificate for the control plane. This says node, but it's not going to be node, is it? It's going to be Jekyll. So back over to you then. And if anyone wants to find that blog post, inlets.dev. You have it in the current directory. Yeah.
So to get a certificate, then we have to provide some extra flags when running the server, being an email for the Let's Encrypt, issuing of the certificate, and by default it will be the projection of Let's Encrypt. But I was looking for this one, for which domain we will try to get a certificate in place.
No, that is an array, isn't it? So that lets us put potentially 2 domains there if we want.
Yeah.
Does that mean that we need 2 servers, or can one server do 2, 3, 4 domains?
I think you can use one exit node and connect multiple clients to it, but I'm not sure about that. I need to check that.
Okay.
I need to test
it. One of the first things, it does actually work. One of the first things I did with this is I thought, right, OpenFAS has a UI. I've got Grafana and I've got Prometheus. And I want to take all 3 and make them available on the internet with a password in front of it, and was able to do that. Now, you don't have to set up 2 domains here if you don't want to. I think 1 is fine. And then we've got your email address.
Just double checking domain.
Looks correct. And then the issuer by default is the production issuer. If we're to use the staging issuer, it's a bit more forgiving and it's great for testing. But hands up, and I'm including myself in this, if you've ever rate limited yourself by messing up your certificates and then not being able to get one for a week. Johan, I don't see your hand up. Have you never done that?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
No, I didn't hit the rate limit
I'm
yet.
sure there's somewhere somebody who's listening can identify with this. Okay, so you want me to go back? And
I highlighted this. Okay, go ahead.
So not secure because it's not HTTPS. I'm now going to change port 8000 to 443. And as everybody's mum and dad knows, if you see a lock, everything's okay. We got a nice lock. Certificate is valid, and you're going to have to take my word for this. It says let's encrypt, and this is good until the 7th of June, at which point Inlets Pro will automatically renew that for you. Now, if anybody wants to access this, it's the same URL as before.
Yep.
Mehdi has made that mistake. Yeah, so Mehdi, if you try this, try the staging issuer first, and once you're happy, maybe switch over. Paul, he's pretty impressed with that, so well done, Johan. And this is a URL you guys can go and check. Now, you've got that domain, but let's say you must have you got FASD running somewhere at home?
No, not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Have you got what have you got running that's HTTP based?
Not much, in fact.
Not much, in fact. I know. Why don't you share with me an image?
Oh, yeah.
What should we do? Email it to ourselves?
That's
what do you
one
think?
possibility. Let me see. Here's running checkall. I know that question was coming. So what you're referring to is there is another feature in the new Inlets Pro release. I'm not sure it's already there for 2-3 releases, starting from
0.8 was when that came in. Yeah.
I think it's this.
File server.
And I can allow you to browse my files. Browse. Yeah.
The use case we have here is that I basically just want to get some files from Johan, and so he's shared a local directory. Let me switch over to my side, and without losing that, let's
I need to change the tunnel.
Yeah, change the port. Without losing that let's encrypt certificate, and without removing that virtual machine, without anything actually, he's just going to reconnect the tunnel pointing at the other endpoint, and there we go. I've now got access to all the files in that directory. And if you do want to stop the file server and go one level up, just so that we've got a bit more to look at.
I'm sorry?
Do you want to stop the file server and move it up one level so I can show people? Now let's see. I'm still only seeing the one file there. What if you got the directory? We should have a bit more. It might be cached. Okay, yeah, it was just cached on my side. So now what I have is access to basically whatever. So let's have a look in Inlets Dev. That's actually rendered the HTML file in there. Inlets Pro, we've got the Git repo here. Let's see what artifacts we've got. There's a README file. So I'm just browsing, but let's say that I actually just care about this README file. What could we do to stop people like the people on the live stream just browsing here and finding it?
Disable the browsing.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, but I think I can put authentication on it as well.
Should we just do disable the browsing to start with?
Yeah.
This is a message you get when the tunnel's down. Let me know when it's up again.
Now it's up again.
Okay, so basically saying, no, you can't browse, you can't guess. And I had this use case because quite often I've wanted to share a file, maybe an 800 meg file with someone on the internet. And rather than me going and uploading it to OneDrive, waiting for 2 hours, and then sharing a OneDrive link and they can't get access because I forgot to put them on properly, what I can do is just go, look, this is a URL, and share it directly with them. Now, that's almost as good as a password, because unless somebody can guess the exact URL, they're not going to get it. But we can go one step further. So why don't you put a password on there and turn the browsing off? Allow me to browse again, but put a password on it. 202103. Okay, back to my side. And it's saying, okay, password, just like if you've used OpenFAS. And what is it? Demo
2021-03.
No. Admin demo. I'm going to have to look at your screen again. Where is it? 2021-03. Yeah, okay, great. I'm in. And now I can browse because I'm authenticated. There's TLS here. So when you combine basic authentication with TLS, you don't have something that you particularly need to worry about. You've got something that's reasonably secure. You could go further with this, but pretty much I've got authentication. I can browse the files. I can get a password from Johan, download what I need, and then he can disconnect the tunnel. And we don't have to pay for that upload and download time or penalty that we would have done otherwise. Now, there's something else that we should just talk about real quick while we're still on here, because I know we're coming up to the hour, which is that there's lots of blog posts, and there'll be more. So you guys need to tell us what you want to see. This one is how you just do what we showed you right now. There's one for your Kubernetes cluster. So if you're running a Raspberry Pi at home, or a home lab, or you have some Dell servers in your basement, without exposing yourself to the world and telling people exactly where you live and your postcode, you can just expose an IP. That's a video you can watch. And then Johan has something pretty cool where you run the database at home or in the data center, and then a portion of that is forwarded into the public cloud. You can also drop in and look at, well, you know, we mentioned what's the difference between this and Tailscale and Wireguard. You can just come and see. And what if you were to become an Ngrok or an Argo tunnel customer or something else? Again, you get a pretty good idea of how it stacks up. Most importantly, you want to know that other companies and other people are using it. So, you know, have a look at use cases. If you're a user, let us know what you're doing, just like Johan has. It's super useful, and it just helps the community grow. Finally, you can get that 14-day trial for free. It's done manually, so as soon as you sign up, I should be able to go in, issue a key, send it over, and you can try anything you like. Or you can use that code before other people grab it, and the next 4 people are going to get some money back off that. So what else is there? Just briefly, there's a separate documentation site. Got some pretty pictures, very detailed use cases, because I think sometimes folks still struggle to understand what it's meant to be used for, and lots of tutorials. So that is Inlets. And let's see, have we got any questions from folks? Well, what questions have we got? We couldn't cover everything that's possible, but what have we shown? We talked about Argo and GitOps. We talked about how to create an exit tunnel manually with Terraform or with inletsctl. That the code's written in Go, and there's open source projects you can contribute to. That there's TCP support and HTTP support separately for different use cases. I'm just looking because we have a bit of a lag on the stream. If we have any comments coming in. What do you think's next for you, Johan? Have you got a blog post in mind that you're working on?
At the moment, I'm working on how to scale the number of inlets exit nodes on a Kubernetes cluster. That's one of the use cases we already talked about. We do have a help chart already in place to easily bootstrap the exit server pods, but that will go well if you want to have 5 or 10 of those tunnels. But if you need to have more, then the blog post is on how the help chart can help to achieve that setup.
Yeah, because you're effectively running the exit server becomes a pod, and then you can have as many pods as you want, scale them to 0. It's quite an efficient way of running more than one.
Yeah, indeed.
Great. Okay, so we don't have any new questions here, but what I'd say is if you have some use case you want to explore, drop into OpenVAS Slack in the Inlets channel, ping me or Johan on Twitter, or check out all of the docs and blogs that we've got for you. Johan, any final word from you? If people are thinking about whether inlets is something they should try?
Yeah, they should definitely try inlets. From my point of view, it's more better than Ngrok. It gives you more flexibility. You're in control of the exit server. You're more in control of the client. We have a lot of automation in place, like the inlets operator we didn't talk about yet. Yeah, definitely check it out.
Great. Okay. So let's draw it to a close there. I'm going to play the exit music and then I'll have a quick chat with you, Johan, and everyone else. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been great to have you here as we've explored inlets, and keep an eye out for the next live stream. Open to suggestions. If there's something you particularly want me to cover or there's a guest you want me to bring in, love to hear from you. All right. Okay. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And here's our outro music.